Okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay. Good morning, and welcome. I'm Jeff Gingold, and I'll be one of the hosts of this morning's meeting. We'd like to thank Jewish Nevada for giving us a mini grant, which helps to fund these programs. And others who wish to contribute are certainly encouraged to do so. We've had some generous donations already. The program is being recorded, and I will send the link to the program to everyone who's registered, and we'll also put that link in the news bulletin. Put your comments in the chat box and throughout the formal part of the presentation, and Rabbi Myra will supervise the question and answer towards the end. Also, I'm going to ask Myra to talk at the end briefly about upcoming programs that we have. As a retired geriatrician and hospice medical director, I'm especially looking forward to today's presentation about aging Jewishly. In Leviticus, it says, "You shall rise before the aged and show deference to the old. You shall fear your God. I am the Lord." So there's a wonderful tradition of respecting older people in our tradition. Our speaker today is Rabbi Richard Address. He was ordained at Hebrew Union College, Cincinnati, received a, maybe we should mute everybody, please. Okay. Our speaker is Rabbi Address. He was ordained at Hebrew Union College. He received a certificate in pastoral counseling and also holds a doctor of ministry from HUC. He served congregations initially in California. He was a senior rabbi at a congregation in New Jersey. He joined the staff of the Union for Reform Judaism, where he directed the Pennsylvania Council for many years and founded the Department of Jewish Family Concerns. A major portion of Rabbi Address's work has been the development and implementation of the Project on Sacred Aging. This project has been responsible for creating awareness and resources for congregations on the implication of the emerging longevity revolution, with growing emphasis on the aging of the baby boom generation. And I've asked him to speak about sacred aging as well. As part, he'll give that discussion as well. He hosts a weekly podcast, which I listen to, Seekers of Meaning, dedicated to discussing issues related to aging, spirituality, and their impact on families and congregations. He has a huge bibliography, has received numerous awards. I am most honored to welcome Rabbi Address to Reno.
I wish I was in Reno. Thank you very much. But hello from beautiful southern New Jersey outside of Philadelphia, where it's afternoon and it's sunny and the leaves are turning and it's about 55 degrees. So that brings you your weather update. I have no traffic to tell you about, but thank you, Jeff. Rabbi Seifer, it's good to see you. It's nice to see all of you in our little Zoom boxes for those of you who are on camera. For those of you who are not on camera, I hope you're doing something nice. Whatever. The more we do these Zoom things, and we've been doing them now for what, almost 2 years. As I tell my colleagues, every colleague I know is going to have a book of Zoom stories, which we can never publish. So thank you for the introduction. We have lots to do, and I want to just orient you to the focus of what I'm going to try and talk to you about, and hopefully engage you in some dialogue. Jeff is right. I direct and founded the program called Jewish Sacred Aging, the website jewishsacredaging.com. I put this all in the chat room, so if there's a question that comes up, you want to check out the website, or I'll invite you, if you wish to write for it, because we have people who are writing for it from all over North America. And a lot of them came to us from these presentations. All that information is on the chat, and if you want to contact me, the email is on there as well. We've been engaged with this. So this is a project that originally was created in the 90s when I worked for the URJ, when we had a department, blessed memory, When the URJ got rid of all the regions and got rid of all the departments, I took this personally. So I deal mostly in congregations of all denominations and interfaith. As I was telling Jeff before, next weekend I'm actually doing a whole weekend for a church who's also dealing with boomer issues. And so the focus is really to say, look, the American Jewish community is significantly undergoing tremendous transition and transformation. The baby boom generation, which was up until last year the largest cohort, we've been surpassed by the millennials, the largest cohort, has really changed its perception of affiliation and identification a lot with institutional Judaism. Much of the spiritual revolution in contemporary American Judaism has been driven by the baby boom generation. And is really as a result of the feminist revolution, the LGBTQ revolution, the spiritual revolution, the music revolution in synagogues really has emerged during the last 4 decades as baby boomers have taken their place within leadership positions within congregations. There's reasons for that. We can get into it later on. So my focus today really is to try to say, okay, this is what, given all of this and given the voluminous amount of text, go positive and negative. If you don't believe the negative, go read Genesis, Ecclesiastes chapter 12, the first paragraph or two, is to try to present to you a theological foundation based upon a series of classic Torah texts, because everything we do in our work is based on text, everything. And to lay this out to you and just have you react to it, whether you say, well, it makes sense, or it doesn't make sense, or I can relate to some of it or not all of it. But yes, that's part of my life. I've lived this part, or I'm living this part. And that's the goal. And we're hopefully going to touch on a whole variety of different things. One of the things that we want to talk about is, and just plant in your brain and your mind and your soul, is this approach to creating a spiritual maturity. Our focus of our own spirituality probably is not the same when we walked off the bima at a bar or bat mitzvah when we were 13 or 14. And our own theological or spiritual approach to life may be categorically different now than it was when we were 25 or 35 or 45. A lot of times we're still stuck in that what Dr. Larry Hoffman at HUC in New York calls pediatric Judaism, where things are so reduced to a childhood level. And the reason, and one of the reasons why so many baby boomers have left institutional Judaism, synagogue land, is because they don't need any more pediatrics. We're living a very, very different life. We're living longer, we're living better, we're confronted with so many more different challenges that we want our tradition to speak to those challenges, to speak to who we are. And so as many are leaving, more and more are looking for quality education online, and many more are going into chavurot or small little unidentified or sometimes unaffiliated chavurot or synagogues who are looking for community and looking for meaning. In the high holidays, the major prayer, as all of you know, is the Unatana Tokef, this great, long, powerful, passionate, and sometimes pondering prayer that really has a theme of it in many ways of control. The thing that I want to start you off with is this idea of the myth of control, which is what that prayer is all about. And the idea that we have, as we get older, a realization that of all the things in life that we can control, there's one thing that we cannot. You could sit in shul 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You could pray your heart out. You could never eat a cheesesteak. That's it, if you're from Philly. Okay. You, no matter what you do, the one thing that none of us can control is time. And as we get older, that weighs on us, I'm going to suggest to you, more and more and more. And every single one of us in this class, I will bet you, knows somebody who thought they had more time. So this idea of time is, I would suggest to you, very, very powerful. And the question that then emerges in the work that we do is, what do you do with the time we have left, knowing that we cannot control the time we have left? And I'm going to suggest to you that is the spiritual question. That is the spiritual question for our age. What do we do with the time we have left, knowing that we cannot control the time we have left? And so we look to Judaism, we look to our texts, we look to our tradition to say, Nu, give me some guidance here, because this can be very frightening. So I'm going to give you very quickly 6 texts, T-E-X-T-S, can't spell either today. 6 texts that I'm going to suggest you form a theological foundation upon which to move forward in our life. Now I'm going to try an experiment. The experiment is called sharing my screen. So if for a moment, if you will utter a small prayer to the technology gods, who, as you know, are a very, very fickle group of gods, equal to, in my world, the baseball gods, to whom I offer regular prayers, and to whom the answer is usually no. So here we go. Click, click, click. Hallelujah. A moment, it's a Shehechianu moment. Please join me, Shehechianu. Okay, so here, I'm not going to keep this screen up for the whole time, but I just want you to look at it. If you want to write down these 6 texts, that's fine. The first text that I want to talk to you about is Genesis 2:18. It is a fantastic, fantastic piece of text. The context of this is, it's the second creation story. You know, we have 2. Couldn't have 1, we have to have 2. So this is the time when Adam has been created alone, okay? And God says to Adam, it's not good that you are livado. Livado is this wonderful Hebrew word. It's a high holiday sermon that talks about being alone. It's not alone. It's not the alone after a full day's worth of meetings and your work, and you just want to go home. You want to take the phone off. You don't want to be bothered. You just want to be alone. Just leave me alone. Give me the clicker. Let me look at some mindless television and just leave me alone. Okay. That's not the aloneness that this really, I'm going to suggest to you. This aloneness is the existential aloneness that a lot of people have been feeling during this pandemic. This existential aloneness allows us to reach out to other people. I'm getting a lot of feedback from somebody. So if you could all mute, make sure you're muted. The existential aloneness, of which drives us to create relationships. My own personal theology is what I call the theology of relationships. And it really means something very, very simple, because I'm from Philly. We have to keep things simple. We are terribly afraid of being alone. So we seek relationships. And when we're 20, 15, 25, 30, our circle of relationships are pretty large. But you get to be 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, and slowly but surely, a lot of that circle of relationships begins to get smaller and smaller and smaller. This is part of time. And those relationships a lot of times are not replaceable. And the loss is more deep and profound. And I think this is part of what this means, livado. And if we had lots more time, we could go into a whole riff about isolation and the pandemic and what's happening in the mental health crisis. We can talk about that if you want later on. But this first text really, to me, sets the stage as saying, look, as we get older, we understand the power of being in a relationship with other people. In the workshop that we do, which is one of the ones we do a lot on new rituals for new life stages, a couple of the rituals that we've published and talk about in the workshop have to do with older adult cohabitation, cohabitation without marriage, and the redefinition of adultery in light of Alzheimer's and dementia, all of which is happening in every synagogue. And the bottom line, when you strip away all the stuff, is that people just don't want to be alone. They don't want to be alone. So this idea of livado is a very, very fascinating word, The second text this is from the first portion of the Torah. The second chapter, which I will suggest to you, this is purely Richie Address's opinion, is the most important chapter in the Torah. This is Genesis 3. This is the mythology of Adam and Eve. And you know it, you've studied it. And it's the theology also of that first question that's asked in the Torah, Ayeka, where are you? And it has nothing to do with you're in Reno and I'm outside of Philly. But like livado, which talks something spiritual, this Ayeka is also spiritual. And so we start to ask ourselves at this stage of our life, where are we? What's going on here? And this is part of the power of that chapter, because it is in Genesis 3 that what a professor of mine called finite factuality is introduced. Finite factuality is the reality, on one hand, that, here, come back to all of you, that on the one hand, we want to continue to live. Healthy organisms want to continue to live. But as we get older, we also understand, as Genesis 3 tells us, that we will not, that we are mortal. And by the way, and I believe this 1,000,000%, when this reality of we want to live forever, we want to continue to live, and then when this reality is that we will not comes together, the result of that confrontation, we call religion. We call religion. Because what it does in this attempt to deny the fact, it's the Denial of Death book by Ernst Becker that many of you read in graduate school, but it's also Genesis 3. So in order to compound or to confront this frightening reality of the ultimate aloneness, that we create mythologies, we create afterlives, we create gods, we create religion. Because this death anxiety is so powerful. That's why Genesis 3 is so powerful. For those of you who are mental health professionals, I suggest you take a look at a book called Staring at the Sun by Irving Yalom, Y-A-L-O-M. And in his book, he talks about death anxiety, and Becker talks about it, and other people talk about the same thing, that at the heart of the human experience is this reality of our mortality is the basis for everything. I do believe this, and I do believe that this is the basis of religion. And I do believe that as we get older, the reality of this impacts all of us. Absolutely. And it is a powerful and profound reality. Some people repress it. Some people obsess about it. But each one of us has to come to understand it. Genesis 3 introduces what I call the 3 why questions of existence. And it's all based upon this confrontation. To me, these are the only questions that matter. These are the questions that as we get older, especially in the middle of the night, we may wake up contemplating. There are 3 very simple questions. Why was I born? Why must I die? Why am I here? Simple, right? Easy, like multiple choice. Why was I born? Why must I die? Why am I here? And that, we ask ourselves, are we some cosmic accident of sperm and egg? Or do each one of us have a reason that we exist on this planet at this time? So this leads us into the theological and very, very Jewish question about, what's my reason for being here? What's the purpose? What's the purpose? What's the meaning? So those of you who've read Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning know that in the middle of that book, thank you, Chris. I hope that your name is Chris. In the middle of that book, he says, people ask, I'm paraphrasing, people ask, what's the meaning of life? He said, that's the wrong question to ask. The real question to ask is, how can I live my life so that I have meaning? Which is a very Jewish, you can't get more Jewish than that, okay? It's the high holidays. Look at the high, go get that prayer book out from Yontif and look at some of the liturgy. That's what they're asking. How can you live your life so you have meaning, knowing that you can't even control the amount of life that you have? That's the spiritual question. There's a wonderful a book from the old days, when I was a kid, younger, in 1967, a book called The Chosen by Chaim Potok. Some of you may have remembered that book. They made it into a very mediocre movie, but the book was good. And there's a section in the book where Reuben, who's the kid, is asking his father, who's a chacham, what the hell is all this about? A 16-year-old kid, what's up, Dad? What's going on here? And the chacham, the dad, turns around and says, we are here alive for what amounts to, in the grand scheme of the universe, the blink of an eye. The blink of an eye. But it's not the blink of an eye that matters, says the father. It is the eye that blinks, which is the Frankel response, okay? It's what you do and how you live that brings meaning to your life. So these 3 why questions, why was I born? Why must I die? Why am I here? Flow out of Genesis chapter 3, this great and powerful text that just follows right on Livado from 2:18. Okay, everybody clear so far? This is the easy part. It's nice and easy. Can we, Iris, can we receive a copy of that page? Yeah, you can. If Jeff, you don't get it, I'll send it to you again, and you can then, put it out on the thingy, the internet thingy, whatever that is. Okay, so let me go back to, because the next text it's unbelievable. Here we go. The tech gods are nice. Keep going, techies. Okay, here we go. The third The third text is Genesis chapter 12. Okay, Genesis chapter 12. Go forth, our future, holding on and letting go. Holding on and letting go, go forth. Okay, now, you may remember this text from a couple of weeks ago from Torah study. So I'm sure all of you were in Torah study yesterday, which, by the way, has a text that is really appropriated to older adults and our work. But when Esau is asked by his father, listen, I love beef stew. Where's Jane with the beef bourguignon? You were in the Torah portion yesterday. You probably didn't even know it. Go get me, I love your beef bourguignon. Will you go out, kill an animal and fix it up for me because I can hardly see, I'm old, who knows? And then leads to the whole stealing of the blessing. But in a book by Norman Cohen, who is a professor at the seminary on family issues in the book of Genesis, he says, you know, this is a very powerful little sentence here because it really exemplifies the fifth commandment of taking care of honoring and respecting. And what many adult children do in taking care of a parent is they'll make sure that they're fed. They'll go get that meal, either take out or I'll bring you dinner, mom, because you can't get out or you can't cook in it. It's a very, very it's a lovely little interpretation that he has on this passage from yesterday. Genesis 12, Lech Lecha. The context is the following: Avram, not yet Abraham, Avram receives in the beginning of the text the following message from God: Lech lecha me'artzecha. Get up, go forth to a place that I will show you. This is the Debbie Friedman Lechi Lach song, which you probably do in services. What does that mean? What does it mean? Go forth. What does that have to do with? What does that have to do with getting older? Go forth. We've already been forth. Okay. What do you mean go forth into a place that I will to show you? This to me is a fascinating text for our generation, because and this bumps into a lot of tension, because what this means to me is that our tradition, as brilliant as it is, and it is brilliant, says to us, no matter how old you are, no matter who you are, do not be afraid to go into the future. Do not be afraid to learn. Do not be afraid to grow. Do not be afraid to risk. So the concept of I'm too old to try something new is blatantly against the spirit of Genesis 12. The idea that I can't, I wish I could. The tradition says, then do it. Then do it. Suppose I fail. You fail, you learn, but you've tried, you've done, you've gone for it. And the fact also is each one of us understands on some ways we're all going into tomorrow, whether we like it or not, we hope. And we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. And we'll get to the randomness thing at the end a little bit. Genesis 12 is so powerful about that. But also Genesis 12, if you look at the Hebrew, and many medieval commentaries point this out, Lech Lecha is usually translated in your Plout commentary, go forth. But the Hebrew says, Lech, go, Lecha, to yourself. So to us at our age, it also means, look, your strength is in here. Your strength, your power is in yourself. Your definition of who you are is in yourself. And that faith in yourself is going to help carry you into the future, because we're all going into the future, whether we like it or not. There's people who don't want to go. They're very content, and they don't grow and they don't change. But change is part of who we are. If we had a lot more time, and Judaism has survived because we've been able to change. The Judaisms, by the way, the Judaisms that didn't change are dead. They don't exist anymore. And we're in the middle of this rapid change in American Judaism. So this concept of Lech Lecha, go forth into the future, and go and take lecha, your own self. What does that mean? Part of it means the following. That as we get older, some of us have to confront an issue for our own safety and mental health and spiritual health of the tension. One of the tensions that we have as we in life, this tension of holding on and letting go. By that I mean, and that's not downsizing from the 4-bedroom colonial in the suburbs to the 2-bedroom condominium, but it means letting go of all that shtuyot. That's a technical Talmudic term, not translatable into English. All that shtuyot that holds us. It's those estrangements that we still hold on to. It's those feelings of hurt. It's those antagonisms. It could be those relationships that confront us, that hold us, that repress us, that drive us crazy, that make us angry. It's time for some people to let them go and to hold on to that which makes sense and gives us passion, power, love, support, faith, and hope. This is very difficult. This is very, very difficult. Many people can't do it. There was an article in the New York Times last month saying in the United States of America at the present time, approximately 27% of the entire American population is dealing with some type of an estrangement. Every colleague, every rabbi, minister, priest, cantor, whatever, in every congregation will tell you the heartbreak of having to deal with, for usually a funeral, when somebody says, I held this, I couldn't stand my brother, my sister, whatever. But I'm at this funeral and I'm filled with the fact that what do I do with these feelings? Sometimes it's necessary to let go. Sometimes you have to let go of some of this stuff because you repress it and you repress it and you repress it. And what happens if you constantly repress these negative feelings? You get sick. You get sick physically, and if you read your Maimonides, spiritually and mentally. So this idea of Genesis 12, fascinating to me, absolutely fascinating. This holding on and letting go. And there's this wonderful image. If you need an image to think about, the late Rabbi Harold Schulweis, who is the rabbi at Valley Beth Shalom, down the road from you. If you take Interstate 5 and take it all the way down to LA, and you hang a right, so you get on the 101 and you go up to Ventura Boulevard, take you about 5 hours. Rabbi Schulweis, in a book called In God's Mirror, has this meditation called Holding On and Letting Go. And the image that he has is a trapeze artist. If you remember the circus, nobody knows the circus anymore. I don't think there's any circuses left. But if you remember the circus, or you saw The Greatest Showman, I guess that was the movie. And you go back, the trapeze artist, it goes back and forth and back and forth. And at one time, the trapeze artist lets go and has the faith that that other bar, right, is going to come. That's exactly what Genesis 12, I think, can be. Because to let go of some of this stuff requires a significant amount of faith in our own self. And that's very challenging. It's very challenging. There's one other thing that happened in Genesis 12 that's very, very real. And I would bet you that some of you understand this intimately because you lived it. When is the proper time? The end of Genesis 11, Abraham's father dies. Remember, there's no punctuation or things in the Torah. Abraham's father dies. And it's right after that he gets the call to go forth. Do you know people who were longtime caregivers. And when the caregiving issue was over, they turn around to you over a cup of coffee at Dunkin' Donuts and say, I did my job. I did what I was supposed to do, and my responsibilities ended. I feel I can get on with my life now. Or there's a death in the family. Or there's a divorce. Or there's a remarriage. Or there's a graduation. And a part of life ends. And it's as if another window to channel an overused cliche opens. And the tradition says, go forth. You may not know where you're going, but none of us really do. It's another high holiday. None of us really know where we're going. We don't know tomorrow. You have to have faith. And that's something, and lech lecha, faith in one's own self is very difficult. And we don't teach this enough in synagogue land. We don't have enough conversations about what that word means. So I'd suggest putting that on your adult education agenda. So go forth. There's Genesis 12. So understanding that as we age, we go into this future. And a lot of people just can't. They live in a land that I call the land of woulda, shoulda, coulda, in a house called If Only. You know, you ever see anybody who says, oh, I wish I could have done that. If only I could have done that. I should have done this. I could have done that. But you can't replay the tape, right? I spend some time stuck in traffic. And evidently, every once in a while, when I get, there's nothing on the radio, I'll sometimes go to the land of regret. And I'm perfectly comfortable admitting this because I'm human. And I said, 25 years ago, I should have done this, but of course I didn't. So this idea, to give you a better example, the first letter in the Torah is what? It's a bet. Like this, okay? The bet's closed at the top, closed at the bottom, closed in the back, but open to the future. What does that mean? Every rabbi's preached this sermon, by the way, about, you're writing your new scroll, and it's in the Midrash. So, but for us, it means, look, we can't control what was. There's no way we can control that was, unless you go back to Sherman's Wayback Machine to channel a really great TV show when I was a kid. If you remember Rocky the Flying Squirrel and Natasha and Bullwinkle, that was classic. That was good TV. That was good TV. And Mr. Sherman's Wayback Machine, come on, it doesn't get any better than that. The bet is open to the future. The bet is open. Chris, obviously, I'm taking you on the road because obviously you remember that show. It's open to the future, just like our life is. With the understanding, go back to the first three, that we cannot control that time. The next text, Genesis 32, I'll start to speed up because we're going to run out of time. That's the context of Jacob wrestling with Esau. It's a couple of weeks Torah portion coming up. I talk about estrangement. This is right out of the estrangement thing. And if you were staging this, I'm not a theater. I like theater, but I couldn't stage something. But you can see Jacob gets the word that his brother is coming with thousands of people. He hasn't seen him in 20 years. He's cheated him. He's stolen from him. He's manipulated him. He wants to kill him. He's scared. He sends his wives, his everybody away. And the chapter is he stands at night at the river Jabbok, and he is livado. Same word. He is alone. He is alone. And what happens? He wrestles allegedly with a malach, an angel, but he's really, as you know, wrestling with himself, as we all do. And right before a great momentous challenge or an event or something that our anxiety levels up, we wrestle with ourselves. How are we going to do this? How am I going to get through this? And he's changed. He changes his name. They change his name from Yaakov to Israel. Why? The message to us in our going forth, don't be afraid to change who you are, change your identity. We do this a lot. We have tons of different names as we age, as we get older, as we live our life. There's a magnificent midrash about the power of names and the name that you're born with and the name that people call you. But the most important name is the name you call yourself. The name that you call yourself, which changes over time. And that concept of change inherent in Judaism is inherent in us. It's don't be afraid. This is liberating. This is not a tradition that says, well, you get to be 80, you lived your life, go to Shady Acres, sit in the chair, just relax, let people wait. After all, Dad, you worked your whole life, let people take care of you. To which the tradition says, are you out of your mind? As long as I'm alive, I want to do this, I want to do that. Why are so many baby boomers who leave full-time work now engaged in more work? But it's not work. It's what I call the give back syndrome. They're volunteering, they're doing things, they're giving back to society. They may not be volunteering at the temple to stuff envelopes, but they may be going, if they're a doctor, to the Doctors Without Borders, or they may be saying, I did not do this with my children, but I have been blessed with grandchildren, and I'm going to do everything in my power to spend time with them. Parenthetically, another possible educational program is really the whole concept of the idea of the new Jewish grandparent. I have the people from the Jewish Grandparents Network coming on for a podcast coming up in December, and they've done a whole survey of Jewish grandparents from 2 years ago. And that's an educational program that you should really look at, because there's some findings in there that will really worthy of conversation. And they have a website, jewishgrandparentsnetwork.org, that is probably worthwhile going. And Lee and David are the heads of it. Tell them I said hello. If you get them to do one of these online things, I think it would be very, very, very valuable. So the change in the name, the idea of wrestling with ourselves spiritually. I'm going to suggest to you, and this goes to the Jacob Esau reconciliation. And by the way, Jacob and Esau reconcile. They agree that, they agree to say what happened 20 years ago, we can't control, nor we can change. You hurt me, I hurt you. Mom was behind this whole thing. I was a kid. I was manipulated by my mother. This is before therapy. And we're both prosperous. Esau became very wealthy and rich. Jacob did the same thing. They meet at the river and they agree to say, something, we may never take each other out to dinner. Our kids may never go to Little League together, but we are family. And so we'll agree, we're gonna in essence let go. We're gonna let go of all that stuff and just hold on to the fact that who knows what tomorrow may bring. We just have to be with each other. It's a very, very valuable concept that goes out of this evolution of life, of holding on, of letting go, of changing. This is a great passage, this reconciliation passage. The next passage, Genesis 37:15. 37:15. Let me again put it up. Okay. I'm going to try to bring this puppy in about a couple of minutes. We have the big finish, but and you all are really quiet. I mean, Genesis 37:15. Okay. The context of this verse, very, very, very fascinating. This did not make it into the Broadway show. The context is Joseph. He has the coat, the fancy coat he got from Nordstrom's from his father, Jacob, and the brothers. So you all know the story because you probably saw Joseph in his Technicolor Dreamcoat. So you know the story if you haven't read it in the original. I suggest that you read it in the original. It's kind of nicer. It doesn't have the music and the dancing, but you get the truth. So one day Jacob says to Joseph, look, your brothers are out there doing something. I think they went out to tend flocks because that's what they did then. They tended flocks. And they don't call and they don't write and they don't even text. So I want you to go out and find them. So Joseph says, sure, pop. And he puts on his coat and he heads out. And in this verse, in verse 15 of chapter 37, he meets an Ish. Ish is the Hebrew word for man, but is sometimes translated as angel or messenger. There's another word for that called malach. The interesting thing about this Ish is he disappears. He has one line in Torah, one line. And according to some commentaries, it is the most pivotal line in Jewish history. Because the man, the Ish, says to Joseph, Ma tivakesh. He doesn't say, Mi tivakesh, who are you seeking? He says, what are you seeking? By the way, it's a result of this that when Joseph says, I'm looking for my brothers, he says, yeah, they're down there. Down there he goes, he gets sold into slavery. He, refuses the seduction of Potiphar's wife. That's the chapter we don't teach the kids. Interprets dreams, gets to be the vice president of Egypt or the minister of interior, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You know the rest of the story. But he asked this one question, Ma tivakesh. So I ask you, because the tradition asks, what are you seeking? In the time that we have left, knowing that we cannot control the amount of time we have left, what are you seeking? What are you seeking in your life? This is a very powerful question that the tradition asks us. We rarely ask that of people. And this is a spiritual question. It is not a material question. It is a spiritual question. What do we want? What do we want of our life? Chris, this is part of the Frankel question. What do we want of our life in these last years, decades? We don't know. Somebody leaves full-time work at 65 or 70, God willing, with health, they can have 25 or 30 more years of life. Ma tivakesh, what do you want? What are you seeking in that? You can only play so much golf. You can only watch so much TV. Ma tivakesh. Another high holiday sermon. And the last text, because I want to be, we're almost out of time. This is one of my, it's my second favorite text, other than Genesis 1 and Genesis 3, Deuteronomy 30:19. Okay, Deuteronomy 30:19. This is a knock your socks off, drop dead text. It comes from the Persian called Nitzavim, Nitzavim, we read in the summertime, towards the end of August, when nobody's in shul. I mean, back here in Jersey, everybody's down the shore. So it's so important that we read it again Yom Kippur morning, just in case you missed it in August. There's two parts of this Nitzavim. Very quickly, for those of you who meditate, you'll love this. There's a phrase called Hayom, which means the day. It appears 4 or 5 times in the first paragraph of that portion. And the commentaries say, look, why does God need to, assuming you believe in the divine revelation, but why does God need to repeat the word Hayom so many times? And the rabbis say, because Hayom means the day. And this goes to Genesis 3. And what it really means is you cannot control what was. It's the bet thing. You cannot control what tomorrow will bring. You can only be in control of the moment now. Hayom. Hayom. So that's why you get up in the morning and you say, Modeh ani lefanecha, because thank you, God, I got another day. I got another day. In 30:19, you have this wonderful passage. You all remember this. You're standing this day, all of you, you're going to have in life blessing and curse, life and death, good and evil. Uvacharta chaim. Therefore, we suggest choose life. So that the B part of the verse, which we never teach you, equally important, so that the people who come after you will be blessed. Why is this important for us as we get older? Because life is about choices. And what does it mean to make choices for life can be very, very, very challenging. Very challenging. Those of you who've had to walk with somebody at the end of their life and had to make choices about treatment and had to make choices about when perhaps to withhold treatment or stop treatment. And how does this verse make choices for life? Because the sanctity and dignity of life, the quality of life, are part of that equation of how we make decisions. If we were doing the workshop on making sacred decisions at the end of life, well, we'd walk you through this whole theory and the texts that support this. But sometimes those choices for life are sometimes between bad and badder. And I will bet you some of us on this call right now have had to walk that walk and make those choices. But choices also involved legacy. That's the B part of the verse, so that the people who come after us will be blessed. Because Genesis 3, we understand that we cannot go there. Show of hands, how many of you have grandchildren? Okay. Mine were, of course, were voted in an independent poll here in Southern New Jersey, the world's finest grandchildren. It was a small poll, not scientifically conducted, but I believe the results. Does this happen to you? That you're playing with these kids perhaps a couple of years ago and all of a sudden you take a time out because they have more energy than me, and you look into their eyes, these innocent eyes filled with the future, and somewhere deep in your neshama, is the understanding, Genesis 3, that no matter what you do, no matter how hard you pray, I'm never going to be able to go where these children are going to go. Never. And so the next question then is, what of me do I want them to take with them? Legacy, ethical will, and not material. Forget the condo or the Mercedes, but what of you? What of your soul? What of your life? This is the power of memory to us. This fantastic power of Jewish and Judaism and the word and the concept of memory. This idea of choice. And implicit in this idea of choice is this idea of randomness. And I'm going to end with this because we're going to be out of time. But I just want to give this to you and let you think about it. I believe that we are composed of a variety of different, selves. The Richard Address theory of self, which goes like this: GC plus FO plus R equals S, which stands for self. GC stands for genetic code. In other words, no matter what I am, I want to be like, an Olympic athlete. if you know my mother and my father, you know that genetically that, you know, that ain't going to happen. Okay. It's just not going to happen. I could be like Weight Watchers poster child. Ain't going to happen. Okay. FO stands for family of origin. None of us can escape this. You know, none of us. Jonah tries to escape it. Other biblical heroes try to escape it. None of us, no matter how much money we spend at the therapist's office, those tapes of mom and dad, they're still there. And I'll bet you some of you hear those voices even now. I mean, the money may help you understand how to respond to it, but those voices are still there. Family of origin is very, very, I just am teaching a class this week on Buber for a congregation, and in doing his biography, and I didn't know this, his mother abandoned him when he was 3 years of age. And his philosophy, it was about I thou, as if to say, his family of origin, do you think there's any connection of his mother abandoning him and him creating a philosophy of needing to be with other people in a sacred relationship? Come on. Come on. Family of origin is very powerful. The R stands for randomness. And this is very important as we get older. Because again, it goes to control. It's the unitana toka. We don't control stuff. Stuff happens randomly, good and bad, good and bad. There'll be people who in your congregation today or tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock are going to get a phone call from the doctor's office saying your tests are in and we need to see you. You're going to get a call. Right now, somebody's probably at the supermarket and they're going to sworn off relationships because they had a horrible history and they bump into somebody and the chemistry is there. And all of a sudden, randomly out of the clear blue, their life changes. How we choose, Deuteronomy 30:19, to deal with the randomness of our life determines the type of person we are. And never before is this more important than as we get older, when so many random things can happen to us. So Deuteronomy 30:19, very, very powerful in how we approach our own aging and the randomness and the choices and the implications of those choices for those who come after us. So in conclusion, from livado, from the fear of being alone, to the understanding of our own finite factuality and the need for relationships to embrace us, to hold us, to the idea of asking ourselves, really, where are we spiritually, and the why questions, to not having the fear from Genesis 12 of going forth, of letting go of that which controls us and holding on to that which makes us joyful and happy and gives us pleasure and meaning, to the freedom to wrestle with our own identity and not to fear to change, to ask ourselves what we are seeking as we get older in the rest of our lives and try to make it true. And in seeking that, to try to make choices that sanctify and dignify life, so that those who come after us will understand in the bloom and the blush of memory, the sacredness of life. Okay, so let me stop there. You've been very quiet. And so unmute if you have a question or if there's a chat question or.
So there's a chat box. First of all, thank you, Rabbi Address. I think everybody is deeply moved by so much of what you said. So if you want to put a question in the chat, or if you want to just like put up your real hand or put up the little, other hand, or even I think we're probably a small enough group that if you just want to unmute and say.
Wow, my wife is.
So Linda Goldman has a question. What thoughts do you have about how we can help each other as we age?
Well, there are many. Where are you, Linda? Let me try to find you on the Zoom machine. I can't find you. Oh, there you are over there. But
I'm here. Yes.
Okay. Are you on? You're on the phone.
Yes.
How are you today? Are you all right?
I'm doing great. Yes, and I'm so happy. Thank you for all your wonderful thoughts. It gives us so much to ponder.
Well, thank you. Thank you. The answer to your question, I mean, it's a long answer to your question, and you don't need another sermon. Part of my work at the Union was the development of the program that we started in the 80s called the Synagogue as a Caring Community. You may have a caring community in your congregation. That program really is the answer to your question on an institutional level. But I think what we're finding as a result, a lot of times in this pandemic, is support, reaching out, community connection. I really do believe that this idea of livado is very, very powerful. I think the strength of a congregation is not in its religious services or necessarily its theology, because I'm going to bet you my Phillies tickets, if you've lined up everybody at Temple Sinai and asked them to give their opinion and response to the theological positions of Reform Judaism, you get a what? But what holds people in congregation land is our connections, our relationships. And so, they're even more important about and now in the pandemic, when so many people are isolated, regardless of age, but especially older adults. And the society itself is still an ageist society. We still warehouse people. We still put people in institutions and forget about them. And it's a cynical, horrible thing to say. But the reality is that's true in many cases. So Linda, the short answer, without going and unpacking everything, is the more you can connect with people on a fundamental human level, phone calls, if you're not allowed to go visit somebody because of the pandemic, phone calls, knocking on a door, just making sure that people are connected. There are congregations who have really risen to the occasion during the pandemic and never let anybody really be alone. There's no reason for anybody who's ever voluntarily joining a congregation to ever feel that they are alone, ever. There's no excuse, because everybody has the internet, everybody has a telephone, and when the pandemic is in, everybody can go knock on the door. And whether you're bringing meals, whether you're just stopping over there, we used to promote a program for the youth groups of just, adopt a grandparent, which is a silly phrase, but 25 years ago it wasn't. But the idea of having the youth group and get involved with people who are shut-ins, you have the ability to do a demographic analysis of a congregation. Who are the people who are living alone? Who are the people who can't get out? Who are the people who really are literally alone? Connect them with a teenager, connect with a member of your youth group. Congregations develop transportation programs. This is before Lyft and Uber, to make sure that if they wanted to come to an event that they could, either through the congregation or through affiliating with cab companies. Again, this is before Lyft and Uber. Some congregations even got endowments so that if they went to the Lyft or Uber or a cab company, that the congregation footed the bill because they had an endowment. So there's all just connection, relationships. No one should ever be allowed to feel alone. And with the pandemic and with the Zoom machine, more and more people who are alone have kicked into going to services, adult education, and this is the way of the future. And that's a blessing. That's a blessing. They feel connected in ways prior to the pandemic that they couldn't have felt connected because they couldn't get out to the rabbi's lecture or services or whatever. Now they can sit on the Zoom machine and go. And there are congregations who actually have people in the congregation people who are older or technologically, didn't know how to do this, actually to either go to somebody's home or call them up and walk them through how to get on the Zoom so that they could go to a service or go to an Older Dead. That's the short 3 minutes and 30-second answer.
I think I want to riff off that because I've had a question throughout your presentation. In terms of the texts and asking the questions and going forth and, letting go and all that good stuff, so much of what you said, I wonder if you can speak to how that's different or how one does that if you're not in great health a lot of those things struck me as so much easier if you are well, healthy, mobile, and that the real challenge with aging is that, some of that goes at some points, and then some of that seems so much harder to me.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. So now the literature used to have in the aging literature 3 ages. They used to talk about this is the 3rd age of life. So now a lot of the new literature is talking about the 4th stage of life, which is really what Rabbi Seifer is talking about. And that 4th stage of life is when people become frail. And, you know, for example, I'm 76 years old. So normally I would be a senior citizen. So somebody made the mistake recently of saying, well, you're a senior. And I said, say that word one more time, I'm punching your lights out. You know, I'm not a senior citizen, even though I have my AARP card, whatever that does. Too many things in my head. So this idea of, and the health and wellness, when you do the workshop on health and wellness, this does come up, Rabbi Seifer, a lot, because it's when people enter that 4th stage of life and they are frail and they may not be able to be mobile or have so many health issues that the idea of lech lechaing is an anathema to them, because their lech lecha may be literally moving from the bed to the living room. And by the way, age is not necessarily an indicator of this, because I have somebody in my mind right now who's 71 years old, who's literally frail, very, very frail, and his entire mobility is literally from the bed to his easy chair. That's his mobility for a whole variety of reasons. This is a real challenge for our society. It is a real challenge. So it really also speaks to Linda's question, because a lot of these people are alone. So human contact and interaction can sometimes be a manifestation of some of those texts, even learning, because you can still, through technology now, go to a class even if you're not mobile. And we have people in nursing homes, in assisted living facilities, who can't get out, who aren't mobile, but they're going to classes because of this explosion. This is a major blessing. But it has to be a congregation or a community willing to invest the time and not the money. This doesn't cost any money. It costs human time, which is in many cases more precious than money, to be with these people, to visit these people, to take care of these people. This is going to, especially as we age out, this is going to be a major social justice issue, because, you know, look, I know people who are in this position right now because of illness. They go on tours, and I talked to somebody about this. Is how do you do this? She said, Richard, there's now websites. I can't get out of my house, but I can go on the web, and there are these websites that allow you to tour everything from cities to countries to museums to Broadway, everything. That's intellectually stimulating for me, even though that I'm not able to get out of my house. I don't drive anymore. I can't do this. I can't do that. I mean, Mom, I have had, you know, mobility issues, but I can do this. This is part of the change that's happening now. And it is very, very difficult. It's
one of the
very,
things, yeah, one of the things that strikes me, since this is sort of under an umbrella of trying to make our communities more inclusive of everybody, is that this may be a really wonderful, I don't know, task is not the right word I want, but I'll use it because I can't come up with a better one. For those who are in, what did you call it, the third?
Yeah, that's where I am. You know, according to that's where I am right in the 3rd stage. I'm still active.
Think of us in the 3rd stage in terms of what we might offer to those in the 4th stage.
Right.
Because we're close enough that we sort of get it, but in the 3rd stage, presumably we're still up and about and maybe more mobile and healthier than some in the 4th stage. That could be a really, really important mitzvah for us in terms of making things happen in our congregation. I just throw that out
Absolutely.
there.
And it won't cost any money. It'll cost time, because all of us can look into the future and see what may be happening to us. And it's frightening. It's very, very frightening. But this is part of what Linda was asking too. This is a challenge. Longevity has raised all these issues that a generation or two ago were never, but the fact that we're expecting to, it's not unusual to live into 90s and 100s and be active and be, so yes, what you're saying, I would challenge the congregation to perhaps, as a result of this experience, perhaps put together a little think tank and just dream.
Right. There's also a question, which I think from Edna, which dovetails into this, whether you see mental health frailty or even mental frailty different from physical frailty.
Yeah, this is a, I can't even, I don't have the words to describe what's happening now and what's going to happen. The mental health challenges of the pandemic, no congregation or society in America is not prepared for. I have yet to talk to a therapist who says that they can't handle the work that they have. They can't handle, there's too many people who are dealing with stuff. Mm-hmm. Number two, with the explosion in dementia and Alzheimer's, because we're living longer, there are not enough therapists, mental health professionals, geriatricians, caregivers to take care of us. The Alzheimer's Association says that right now there are about 6 million people in the United States dealing with Alzheimer's. As the baby boomers age out, that number is expected to grow between 15 and 16 million. There just aren't enough people trained to take care of us. Who's going to do that? No congregation is set up to do that. And nobody wants to talk about it. And this is an editorial statement. So if I offend you, I'm sorry. Write a nasty letter to somebody. But the hockey pucks in Washington are arguing over the reduction of funds for this. And it doesn't make any sense to me, because this is a reality. It's not theoretical. These statistics are real. And the mental health stuff is very, and not only, it's cross-generational. If you look at all the literature now that's coming out about the mental health of teenagers, the increase in suicidal ideology, it's very, very frightening. And there just aren't enough people to take care of it and train. The mental health stuff. Look, there's a Facebook page for Judaism and mental health. I just had a young woman who does a program on mental health as a podcast. I think Julie was 2 weeks ago or last week. There are organizations who try to deal with this, but it's very, very, very powerful. And you can start locally. I mean, NAMI, the Association for Mental Illness, Jewish Family and Children's Services, if there's one in Reno, I would urge you to make partnerships and coalitions with them, congregational wise, bring in people to do programs, work with your youth group. This is a major, major, major concern, major concern.
I think one of the issues that I've been wrestling with during this pandemic is, in the past, when we cared about someone and we loved them, we spent time with them, we hugged them, we were with them, we were physically and emotionally there with them. And this virus has made us, it's turned everything upside down. When we love somebody and we care for them, with COVID, we stay away from them. And that has produced a really incredible sort of inverse situation in terms of how we relate to each other. I know I have some, I'm immunosuppressed, but I'm a retired physician. And so I spent my career caring for people and reaching out to people and stuff. And then suddenly, for my own health reasons, I had to sort of be away from people. And it's I don't know where it's going to lead. I mean, it's really produced kind of turned things upside down. We're in tough times.
No, I think to quote, Rabbi Hamilton, the world is upside down, and it's from the show if you haven't seen. The pandemic has changed it. The pandemic has changed the way we relate to each other. It's not going away so quickly. You're a physician. You probably know this better than I do. But I do have faith that, an understanding that when things really mitigate and we can get back to a more normal social situation, people are going to rush to be with each other. I really do, because I think, I think that's so inherent in us to be with others, that socialization. That's Genesis 2:18. It's the livado factor, but it is different. Look, I'm triple vaxxed. I got booster, and most of my friends are now triple vaxxed. And I was with somebody, just a Tuesday night in New York. I had a dinner with an old friend from high school. Okay, junior high school. And we're still friendly. He's a physician in Manhattan. And his hospital was one of those frontline hospitals with COVID a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. So we met him for dinner, and he stood up, and I hadn't seen him since before the pandemic. And we went like, okay, what do we do? And then we said, oh, screw it. And we gave each other a big hug, because it's at that moment you realize the world is upside down. I think, though, Chris, that things are going to, I think for this stuff, that intimate type of stuff that was missing will come back quicker than anything else. I really do believe that. And by the way, you now have you have a physician and a geriatrician. Already you have the makings of an expert think tank. Just throwing that out there. I don't want to give you any more work. It's 22 after. Any one last question before you want? I know Jeff wants to wrap it up about stay tuned for next month coming attraction. And I put my contact information and everything, and I'll email you, Jeff, the piece of paper with the text on it if you haven't have it. And you can,
I will forward that. Great.
Any last minute questions?
I would recommend that people take a listen to Seekers of Meaning, the weekly podcast, and particularly the September 10th episode, which was actually Rabbi Address's thoughts at the time of high holidays about aging and the society, and there was wonderful corollaries to what we discussed today. Why I asked him to be our speaker today, and we're just delighted that you were able and willing to spend some time with us. And next time you out to Sacramento to see friends in Sacramento, you'll stop by us.
God willing, I'll be able to do that soon.
In person. Okay. Myra, would you like to?
Yeah. Okay. I just want to do one wrap up thing as well, which I think is what we heard. Even, Chris, when things open up and it's maybe safer to be around each other, it strikes me that some of these realities of COVID are also the realities for some of us as we age. And so, and being able to get out, being around people, whatever. And so thinking about how we make that, how we continue to create meaning and connection through all of that, I think, which is what Rabbi Address so wonderfully brought us to this morning, is really our task. And again, I so feel that those of us who are older and still up and able really have an obligation to be doing that for one another as we get frailer and get older and are not up and able. And that might be a really, and it's meaningful for us. So that might be a really important thing to look for. All right, so the next session is going to be the first Sunday in December, which I believe is the 5th, same time, same station. And I'm really excited about it, and I hope you will all be there and encourage others to come as well. Our presenter is an Indian Jewish artist, and by India I mean Mumbai, India. An Indian Jewish artist named Siona Benjamin, who will present her multicultural story, an overview of the history of Indian Jewry, and all of that comes out in her artwork, which is really amazing. You might go online and look at her artwork. It's Siona with an S, Siona. And Benjamin, and you can Google her. And if you are registered, which you obviously are because you're on this call, you got the piece that she has a video, which for like $1.99 you can rent on Amazon for a short while. And she asks people to look at the video in advance, which will give you some background, and then she can go further. I think it's called Am I Blue? Something Blue. It's in the registration materials. And I think it's going to be really interesting. So through her art,
Blue like me.
Story. Say what?
Blue like me.
Blue, thank you. Blue, Am I Blue? The song. Blue Like Me is the video. And again, you can go on Amazon and there's like a $1.99, I think, short-term rental option for it. And she's just delightful. And her artwork is, I think, really amazing. And so we'll hear her multicultural story and learn about Jews in India and so forth. And by way of also seeing her art and hearing from her. So we look forward to you. We are tentatively, we don't have it all down, but we think January is going to be about LGBTQ plus gender stuff. And we think February may be about race and talking to children and grandchildren. We don't have that totally nailed down, but that's what we're working on. So we hope to see you the next time. And I hope you all can answer all those wonderful, golly, if you can answer all those wonderful questions Rabbi Address threw out at you this morning, please call me.
Call me too. Call me too.
But I certainly see that as our work, as our sacred work. So thank you, Richard, so much.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Yeah, everybody, you just stay safe, stay healthy.
Have a great trip. Have a great trip to Canada.
If I can get in there,
If you can get in.
I'll take care. Take care, guys. Bye-bye. Thank
Bye-bye,
you.
everyone.
Everybody connected, and I think, Jeff, are we going to sign off?
I think we're going to sign off, and I'm going to end the recording right now.
All right. Thank you all. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.